That's one of the harder things I've done as a climber, and I don't recommend it. Welcome to my backyard. You're on the JRB Tree Climbing channel. jrbtreeclimbing.com is my website. It's also a Facebook group, and as of today, it's also a Patreon site. Many have reached out to me and asked what you can do to help support me in this journey, and so anyone who'd like to support me via Patreon, that might help offset some of the costs for the toys that I'm buying. This hitch cord was on the shelf in an arborist store just 2 days ago. Doing everything I can to test as the greatest variety of gear that I can. On my website, you'll see a list of my innovations, including the JRB climbing method, JRB hitch climbing method, the JRB hitch, the saddle hunter's hitch, the buffalo hitch, as an enabler for the JRB cinch, giving you tools for your toolbox. And today's video is about the JRB Ascender Hitch. I've got it tied here on this single rope, and I doubt you've ever seen anyone do that before, because I haven't. And that is a single rope rappel with friction provided by nothing else than two identical friction hitches. If you've ever tried to watch a video, and I say try because I couldn't get through it, a video of someone climbing up a rope with two-prussiks, it's a painful ordeal. I can do it quite easily with this friction hitch, and I'll show you that in a moment. But there's plenty of time for climbing videos in the future. Today is about the knot. So a while back on this playlist, the JRB Ascender Hitch, I introduced a new friction hitch, the JRB Ascender, and it's called that because I have the ability to put in an optional handle and have it operate similar to a hand ascender. So please review the videos on this playlist for that background. I've gotten some feedback. The first piece of feedback is that, well, it's a relatively complex knot to tie. Well, I really can't change that, in the sense that if you think about it, when it comes to new knot explorations, anything pretty simple has already been introduced. So we're going to be entering a realm of complexity that, let's just say, I think the reward is worth the burden of tying it, and a reminder that I never tie knots at the climb site, or typically don't, especially in a hunting situation. I tie them in advance. They're already on my rope. Other feedback I've gotten include that, well, there's a lot of variations. We've got this compact mode and we've got bridge mode, and it's kind of a little confusing. Can we consolidate that? And we can. I'll be showing you that. And the other comments really have to do with its grip, whether someone has trouble setting it to get proper grip. We'll go over that. And more importantly, on that move of a rappel, you'll note that I always rappel on a munter, and the friction hitch is just there for backup. But on that journey down, it was just the friction hitch. So if there was two of the greatest tests of a friction hitch are, besides its ability to grip reliably, are the ability to break it under load. And I'm able to break a single JRB Ascender under the weight of my full body. And what I just did was a full rappel with friction provided by just these friction hitches. Now, if a friction hitch should ever be jammed up, this would be the time that it should be jammed up. And so, never having put any additional, I didn't loosen this foot loop at all, but let's just watch. I'm going to take my two fingers and hold them in this fashion, and watch. I can advance that with just that. Look, I just rappelled on this, and I'm breaking this with two fingers, and I can put it back up with just two fingers. Remarkable. It is tied in a non-jamming configuration, and I'm going to take you into the lab and show you how to tie it. Okay friends, so here we are in the knot lab, and we are going to learn how to tie this, the non-jamming variant of the JRB Ascender. Now, a point for me to make sure you're aware of about the demonstration is that although I did a rappel with two friction hitches, I don't recommend that. That was a test. That was a test that most friction hitches, well, no friction hitch I'm aware of, can pass, that I'm able to execute that rappel with my finger strength, and then when I'm done, the friction hitch is not jammed and can be climbed without being reset. So the first thing I really need to show you is the original JRB Ascender here, tied in tan. This is the original JRB Ascender. And what happens, if you've watched me climb, you'll note that when I begin to execute my rappel, I will break this friction hitch and I'll just hold it with 2 fingers. I'll hold it so it's nice and slack during rappel, and I absorb all the friction with my Munzer friction hitch or whatever friction device you're using. But if you accidentally allow too much friction in the hitch as you're rappelling, what happens is, because you've got it all squeezed down and there's tension on it, this descending leg that comes off the top of the helix and through this coil effectively just gets pulled really tight. I can't completely emulate it, but it just becomes stiffer to move. That's harder to move. And we would need to reset the hitch. You can just wiggle it a little bit at the bottom of your climb to get a little bit of slack here. If I exaggerate that and bring too much slack up into this, well, now it's not even going to hold, right? It doesn't even hold. You want that to hold, you got to pull some slack back out. So that's how we tune this in a normal mode. And as you see, there's a bend at the bottom, right? That's a continuous loop, a continuous piece of cord. We have to close it somewhere. And we've experimented with where to close it. In the compact variant, version 1, I put the bend up here. Well, all we're doing is moving the bend to a new location. And guess where we're moving it? We are moving it right here, where this cord goes through. We're moving the bend right there. And what that does is it serves as a stopper knot. So this is the bend. It's not a hunter's bend, it's a flat overhand bend. And it serves as a stopper knot. So I can't get extra slack back up in here or down the bottom. And the other thing we've done is we've pre-rigged it for soft bridge mode. So if you want to use soft bridge mode, you run it like this. You want to use it in normal mode, you use it like this. It's ready to go, no matter how you plan on running it. So with one version of the hitch, we've got a single loop, we've got a double loop, soft bridge mode, and you're aware soft bridge mode is the mode we want to use if we want to tend in this manner. So in the climb I executed, my bridge was connected with the upper friction hitch in this mode. It had one loop. My foot loop, it was tied the same way. My foot loop was tied this way. My foot was in here, and that's how I was able to move it up the line. But they were tied identically. We're not going to go really deep on length specs here in this video, and the reason why is I'm putting that information on the jrbtreeclimbing.com website. There's a new page called length specs, and in that I will tell you what you need to use. So for example, this is 7 feet or 84 inches or 213 centimeters of 7mm cord tied on 10mm rope to construct this. This is 6 feet or 72 inches or 183 centimeters of 6mm cord on 8mm rope to create this. I'm not saying you don't need more or that you don't need less. You would use less if you're running it in ultra compact variant. But what I'll do is I will publish on the website the length specification. I'll tell you how much cord I use to tie it, and then what I'll tell you is the length specification to get started to tie this portion of the hitch, and I'll give you 2 additional specs. I'll tell you how long the double loop is and how long the single loop is. And so from that information, you can get a pretty good idea what you might want to cut. And of course, always cut a little bit more until you're sure what you want or need. So with that, I'm going to untie this and retie it. Okay, so here we go. This is the midpoint of that 7 feet or 84 inches of 7mm cord. And I will start by placing it across the rope, and I'm going to hold my left hand in a fixed position, and I'll be working with my right hand. I call this the left-handed JRB Ascender in that I prefer this chirality for operating with my left hand as if it were a mechanical ascender. It actually uses what we call right-hand chirality. If you're a knot nerd like I am, this is what we call right-hand chirality, but it will create a left-handed ascender. So I go around 2 times and drop the cord down across the front. Go around the back, and now using my nail, where the point of that nail appears, I will be dropping this cord down and trace where that nail is. So here's the cord, bring it, and the same working end of the cord, back down through and out the back. And we're going to be fairly aggressive and tighten that. Get all the slack out of that you can. We want this thing tied pretty snug. It's hard to have too much slack in it. Okay, now, very important, holding this with my left hand to make sure that I remembered I started from left to right, because the strand hanging out the back, I'm going to take it around the back and continue that same direction from left to right. We don't want this helix to be backwards. And I'm going to go up 5 coils. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I drop it down. And now this is where the 2 comes from. The 2 comes from, it's going to shoot up through these 2 first coils. The first 2 coils. So it's the same working end. And again, I am going to try to get all of the slack out of this that I can. I spin on that, pull on this, and you can be aggressive. You can be aggressive about as if you're trying to get it jammed. Pull as much slack out of that as you can, so it's nice and tight. Now, in the regular JRB Ascender, we would take that around the back and we'd bring it through here. Got it tight, so it's a little hard to do. And in the regular JRB Ascender, we would take it out here. We would take it right through here. That's how you make this. That's how you make that. Well, we're going to skip that last step. We're going to skip that last step. And here's what we're going to do instead. The original end of the rope becomes the working end. I insert my nail in this location. It's going over effectively 3 strands of rope as I hold this horizontal. 3 strands of cord. It's going over that drop bite. See where I put it in. In that location, I'm going to take the original standing end, becomes the working end, and go through that from front to back. This is how I pre-rig for bridge mode. And that wants to be on the left side, and I leave it on the left side. I then take that up and bring it up through this bite. I'm just working it backwards. I'm just working it backwards. And now my job is to join the 2 ends. To join the 2 ends. And so let's get you at the right zoom level to see that. I pull these till they're about the same length. And I'm going to create a flat overhand bend, which is, in this configuration, it is just an overhand knot constructed with these 2 lines. So you can see I've got over a foot of cord here, and I will fashion them so they're the same length. And now I'm gonna get in here as tight as I can, all the slack out of there that I can get, and I'm gonna create an overhand knot here around my finger. Now when you create this bend, which is just an overhand knot, we want to make sure we do it so the lines are never overlapping. That's as compact as possible. Tie it really slowly. It's just an overhand knot, right? I've got one here. It's just a simple overhand knot with both strands. But we want it to be as tight as possible. You know, sure, I'd love to have a hunter's bend in here, but it's just impossible to create one. So I get that as tight as I can, and then I pull on that. Now, this is not the world's strongest bend. It's actually on the weaker side, but we're going to back it up. We're going to back it up. I'm not telling you that at no point in the future history we might not remove that back up. But for now, I feel confident in the integrity of this hitch with the backup. So with it in that configuration, we've got it done with the exception of one more overhand knot. But I want to test it. I want to slide this up. Oh, it's fairly stiff. It did a fairly good job. And yank on that. See, it got looser. I'm hammering on that. And slack just seems to show up. Just seems to show up in the hitch. And so, I mean, I put my body weight on there. You don't want to have to do this. You want to get all the slack out that you can. And then I'm going to pull on this. And see, we've got a little slack there now. Got a little slack. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. We're going to just tighten this overhand knot. I'm going to tighten it. So we didn't set it incredibly hard to begin with. Taking a little bit of finger work out, depending on how much. See, I got more than a centimeter out. And you can repeat that process if you like, because what we're doing is we're tuning this. We're tuning it for optimal bind. It has to hold well, and it has to travel well, and it has to break well. And again, you can test that with your body weight at the base of a tree. And when you're satisfied with it, and before your first climb, make sure this is tight. And now we just put a second overhand knot here as a backup. Sure, that could be a figure of 8 if you preferred. This should not be a figure of 8. This should be a flat overhand. And that becomes two things. It becomes, first, our backup, and secondly, it becomes a handle. So let's see all the ways that I can use this. I can use it here in this fashion, in soft bridge mode. I could climb on it in this manner. I could run it in standard mode. So which one of these loops do we want to disappear, and which one do we want to to be our load line? And it's always the strand that exits the bend and goes down. That's the one we want to absorb load on. So I pull that, and that's the single loop variant. And if you want to switch it back to bridge mode, it's always this little bite hanging off of the other side. Giving it to you at all angles. And again, with the left-handed versus right-handed, if you were building a JRB climbing system, well, I do prefer to look at this as the front of the hitch. I prefer that. And so I do like this as a left-handed one. And so I would climb on it in a JRB system this way, where I grab on the handle and slide that up. The handle becomes on the outside, and I'm looking at the coils. It's just the prettier side of the bend. This being the back side, or the uglier side. I can't always, I just don't want to look at that. I want to look at it as I tied it. Okay, I'm going to untie this, and we're going to make the right-handed variant. One very important feature of the original JRB Ascender is the ability to insert a carabiner to act as a handle in this fashion. And we insert it, so this being a left-handed Ascender, we insert it in this location. I've fashioned a right-handed non-jamming Ascender, and it's the same, just a mirror image. We put our carabiner to grab the rope and that drop bite right in this location, and that acts as a handle. And you've got choices for where you want to put it with respect to your cord. But what I've found is I find myself, especially for a hunting system, I'm not climbing all day long, I find that I really don't need the handle, that this serves as my handle. I basically grab it in this fashion. I grab both of those knots and I got a nice good size handle, and I can slide it up like so. Okay, so here we go. We're building the exact same friction hitch, just from right to left instead of left to right. And I prefer just to tie it. I prefer the left-handed variant. It's just easier for me to tie being right-handed, but you may prefer this. So again, I've selected the midpoint of my 7 feet of rope. I lay it across the line. Let's get in a little tighter. And I go around once. I go around twice. I drop that down. I go around the back. And I will drop it down through these 2 strands. The hardest thing about this is making sure that I'm always in view. Okay, so I've got that. We're going to make it kind of snug. Again, I started from right to left. I'm going to continue that with this strand out the back. I'm going to continue that sequence around once, 2, 3, 4, 5. I then drop it down and capture the bottom 2 coils of the helix and shoot this out the back. Tidy that up. And let's see how much slack we can get out. See, I'm spinning that helix. I'm spinning it using some finger strength to spin that. No matter how hard I work it, we'll still have some cleanup to do at the end. And then, with it nice and loose hanging out of the back, I bring it through here. All right. Now, again, the standing end becomes the working end. And I grab that and I shoot it through. There's usually, you can peer through there and see a small hole, and that's where we're going to shoot that through. It's going over 3 strands, going over that drop bite, this line, and the prior working end. Goes over, around the back, and up through here. And I tune my lengths so they're the same length. And I start the process of, let's get all the slack out of that we can while keeping my length the same. And I start the process of creating a simple overhand knot. And careful not to insert any twists or overlap in the rope. We want it as compact as possible. I always say rope when I mean cord, but you guys are following along. Okay, I see a little twist there. Can you see that? Didn't form that properly. There's a point of overlap, so let's just work that out. What did I do wrong? Go. So now I got that out, and let's get as much slack out of here as we can. Give that a good tug out of you, and now we'll set it. Apply a little load here. And again, it depends on the cord you're using and its properties and how much stretch it has. Again, I would apply my body weight if I were in a real climbing situation. But here in the lab, I'll just continue to work that, and sure enough, I found some slack. And we're gonna get rid of that. We're just gonna work it back here into the bend. Again, I'm just trying to stay out of view of the camera. Okay, that looks pretty good. That's a single loop. And the double loop is here. Let's zoom back out. Okay, so again, I put my body weight there. If we want to run this in a compact mode, right? A compact mode is where these loops are extremely small, right? So I got a little too much cord here. I haven't, but let's say we wanted this to be a compact ascender, as small as we could possibly make it. Well, then I simply put my carabiner here, and make those as small as I want them to be, right? I'll make them as small as I want them to be. That's the compact JRB Ascender. Of course, my length is off, but that's okay. I would have cut less cord, or I'd just trim one end. We go through the same process to get this set properly, and then we would put our stopper here. I won't keep you any longer, but you get the idea. That is the compact JRB Ascender, as small as we can get it, and it's got that great one-hand operation. When I run it with a carabiner in compact mode, I let the carabiner do some work. I grind the rope across the carabiner. If I am running it without a carabiner, if these loops were longer, then I tend it the other way. This is how I used it as a foot loop today. I pull this out the front. You can feel that out and see what works for you. Okay, well, that concludes this tying demonstration. So again, tie this with care. Make sure you test it out well at the bottom of the tree or your climb site, and make sure you get all the slack out that you need to. If you find that the hitch is not holding, that just means, again, too much slack got worked into it. You're going to need to tune your bend. And if it doesn't move, which isn't likely, you would do the opposite. You would adjust it and put some slack back in. Okay, there you have it, the non-jamming JRB Ascender. I'm excited to add this to your toolbox.